Hello guys, welcome back. I read the entire thing, and instead of discussing the book, I can tell you a story that's a lot more relevant to you than this book will be. Once upon a time, a long time ago in Japan, there was a very poor artist, and he had a lady that kept house for him. And one day she went to market, and she came back, and this artist is starving. And she came back with her basket closed, and they had this discussion, and it ends up she got a cat. And she said, I thought we should have a cat because, cats are all useful and wondrous, and perhaps we could use some company. And the artist flies into this rage of, you brought this little devil into a house and she's going to eat and blah, 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 blah. Well, as the story progresses, this cat, which is a bob-tailed calico, she ends up being named Good Fortune, and as Good Fortune joins the household, he goes from extremely poor to the priest from the Buddhist temple coming and saying, we put lots in front of the Buddha and we prayed to him, and your lot was the one that stayed. So we know that Buddha wants you to do this work. And they said, we want a painting of, all the animals coming to say farewell to the Buddha at the end of his earthly life. And so the priest goes into meditation, and as he's meditating, goes to meditate every day, the little cat is there doing her little meditations to the Buddha as well. And the housekeeper realizes it, but the priest is like, no. And he notices as he's going along and doing his meditations and learning what it's like to be the Buddha, the cat is very Buddhist as well. She catches a bird, but she shows mercy to the bird. She will eat no fish. She will only eat rice. She does not behave in any way typical to a cat. So she's very Buddhist in her nature, very no harm, very, very dainty and very gentle. And after he's done his meditations for a couple of days, he starts to meditate on all these other animals and how the Buddha came down in all these different animals. And he starts to do the painting, and he's doing all these beautiful animals. And at first the cat is very pleased and very proud of him. But as time goes on, he is not putting a cat in, because according to this story, and it's only a story, only the cat, because of her pride, would not come to see the Buddha when he was dying, which sounds strange, but there you go. There's always one animal they pick as a scapegoat in every religion, as you notice. In, I think, Catholicism, it's foxes, but here it's a cat. So, the poor little cat is not going to get to be drawn. And every day she's sadder and sadder and sadder. And one day he explains to her he cannot draw a cat into this wonderful painting because the cat alone refused to say goodbye to the Buddha, and therefore the gates of paradise are closed to her forever, so she's a devil. And the cat just bursts into tears and lays her head on his chest, and she keeps crying and crying and crying. She wants more than anything to not hear this. And he feels really bad, and the cat, she goes away from him, sits in the corner of the room, and is just, mourning. And eventually, he's done the whole thing, he's done the whole painting, and there's a little space left at the very end, all the way away from the Buddha. And the cat is, by now she's despondent. She's not even coming to see the painting anymore. And she won't eat, and she won't do anything. And the artist thinks about how kind she was and all the Buddhist things he saw her do, and what a gentle spirit she is. And he thinks, well, I know that this will ruin us, but I have to make the cat happy. So he put the cat into the painting, and put a cat into the painting, and he asked the the maid to bring the cat in, and she brings the cat in, and the cat sees the cat in the painting. The cat's finally being included after all these centuries of being saying, oh no, you're a nasty devil, da da da. And the cat's so happy to see a cat in the painting saying goodbye to the Buddha that the cat drops dead of happiness. And this is actually a good thing, because the cat was so happy she got to die of happiness, which is poetic metaphor. And the priest comes, and the priest sees this, and he loves the painting until he sees the cat, and he goes, how would you draw a devil coming to say goodbye to the Buddha? And we will burn this, and now your reputation is ruined, and I hope you know, da 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 da. And he takes the painting and takes it to burn it. And the maid goes into mourning because she's like, I brought this cat into this house thinking I would bring good fortune to this house, instead of ruin my master. And the master really doesn't care because he spent so much time as a Buddha. He knows the Buddha would have compassion even on the cat, whether or not the cat showed up. Buddha, if the Buddha's actually being the Buddha wouldn't have cared. The Buddha would have still loved cat. And so the priest takes it to burn the painting. And the poor artist sits all night in meditation. And in the morning he hears all this shouting and yelling, and the priests are like barging into his house and saying, come see, come see. And he thinks like they're like, rubbing his face in it and making him come see, like the painting was destroyed or something. And he goes and he sees, and at the very end where he painted the cat, there's absolutely nothing there. It doesn't even look like ink was ever applied to that scroll, but right in the center, right by the Buddha, is the little cat looking up. And I'm going to get all emotional. And the Buddha's hands outstretched, bless the cat. And I'm going to get all emotional. But yeah, so kitty. And that's all you need to know about Inari. That really is, because there's so much in this book that, if you were just starting out like a tiny little fledgling, I think it would crush your spirit. Because the shrines think they're right, the temples think they're right, this group thinks they're right, and everybody else is wrong. It's like, wow. If you didn't know where to go and where to stand, you would feel very lonely indeed. Inari comes to everyone, and Inari comes their own way, and Inari wants their own thing. Things they've asked me for, I know very well they don't have anywhere else. In fact, there were things in this book that said that, like, this person wouldn't do it, but this person would, and blah, blah, blah. And Inari has very strong opinions on what Inari wants, and Inari has shown me what Inari wants in this household, and I'm like, I'm listening to Inari, so I'm not Shinto by any means. I'm really not Buddhist, though I'll work with the Buddha. And I just, believe that they're here and that they want to be here, and I make them as comfortable as possible, but they have no interest whatsoever in me buying, spending a small fortune on a Kamidana, because they go from a couple hundred to a couple thousand, depending on how devoted you are to an Ari. Yeah. And you can, like, buy parts of the god and have them put in a special box, and then you can have a part of the god, and that's the only real way to have an Ari. And I'm like, oh my lord. This is like the church selling relics and all this other stuff. Like the church used to sell pieces of the cross or something. Like, oh, Jesus touched this. We had a nun tell my mom that if you put all the pieces of the cross that they sold together, you could probably make a cathedral. So she didn't believe one word of it. She said that was like superstitious nonsense, and that sometimes the church, take this the right way, sometimes the church kind of preyed on people's superstitions, and there's kind of a thing where the temples aren't bad. I'm not saying they're bad, but if people want something, they'll make it for them. They don't really have to believe in it or think it works or anything. If people are saying, we want this, they'll give it to them. But at the same time, they'll also tell them, no, you cannot do what Inari actually asked you for. So it's really complicated, but the good points were, you can see Inari how Inari wants to be seen. Inari appears to some people as a fox. Make no mistake about it, it's Inari. It is not one of the Kitsune, it's Fox, and it's Inari. Sometimes Inari appears as a dragon, or a wind spirit, or like the air, or anything they want to appear as, they can appear as. They've appeared as dragon, snake, fox, ball of light, anything they want to appear as, they'll appear as. Old man, young woman, geisha, anything. They'll do whatever they want to do, and they'll go wherever they want to go. I think the researcher kind of missed that part, because the researcher didn't have any faith to go on. They did participate in a lot of rituals, but they weren't looking at it from a faith-based view, so they were kind of missing the view of Inari does as Inari pleases, and talking in Inari's way. Inari wanted a young girl, for example, from Japan to work with her, and the girl had been going to a Catholic school, and to get graduation, you had to renounce the kami, and you had to take Catholic baptism, and her whole family was warning her, do not do this, especially with Inari dwelling in this tree right on our property. Do not do this, and your ancestors are upset with you, and da-da-da. She wouldn't listen. She did what she wanted, because she wanted graduation. Well, during the war, she comes back. Please don't ask me which war. I will hit you with this book. And she's coming back at night, and of course there are no lights on because it's the war. And she falls into a well. She should have died. She should have drowned or broke her legs or something, but nothing happens, and she manages to crawl out. And remember, in Japan, there was no food at the time. It wasn't like the magical whatever of food up here. People had to find what food they could. A lot of people survived by wildcrafting, which sounds charming until you realize entire places were obliterated. Anyhow, and rant. She got up the next morning and she found the cloth that the people would wrap with tiny food they could give her laid neatly out over the well, and she found all the food neatly arranged around the well, and she realized that Nori said, "Hey, stupid, brighten up. I'm here. I don't care what this invading god. I'm here." So yeah, Inari definitely got that person's attention. And then there was a story about how there was, there are unofficial things people put on the Inari's mountain that the priests are annoyed at, but they really don't have the time or energy to go tear them down. They'll just tell people to tear them down, and people are like, "No, don't think so." And so he took his and he put it in front of all these other ones, and he was blocking them. And this is considered extremely rude and disrespectful, in the culture. And so Inari burned his house down with his whole family in it. So yeah, that's what people say. Some people would say, "Oh, that's just a coincidence," but some people are like, "No, Inori got angry. Like, you don't go out of your way to make Inori angry. They're not evil or bad by any means, but they are wild. And if you do something blatantly disrespectful, like all these other people would have all their stone altars up, and he just shoved his in front to say theirs don't matter, mine does. Of course Inori's going to get angry because those were Inori's altars. Those were Inori's things. You just don't push Inori's things over and put your own thing in and say, "This is what Inori will do." Inori doesn't take instructions very well, which is why I use the story of the cat, because cats don't take instructions very well. The cat chose to be Buddhist in nature. The cat was not, obeying because she wanted to obey. She chose to be Buddhist in nature. And Inori chooses to go where Inori was, and that includes the red light district, and to protect criminals, and to protect prostitutes and geishas and everyone else, and to protect worldly ambition. Like with some people, they tried to say that was bad, that these people are not real believers because they are asking Inori for worldly things. But like from other perspectives, they would say, yeah, having all the worldly things you want, having enough food to eat and clothes on your back and a place to live, it makes it heck of a lot easier to be spiritual then, if you don't have to starve to death. Because in the story I related to you about the cat, the Buddhist priest brought a huge sum of money and said, because a calm pond reflects better, meaning that if the artist wasn't half crazy and starving and about to lose everything, he was going to think a lot better and do a lot better art. So the temple had no problem. In Buddhism, they generally don't have a problem with you having a lot of nice worldly things. If it helps you be more spiritual, then more power to you. Which is in direct opposition to what we think in the West. We tend to think that having a lot of worldly things distances us from the gods, where it doesn't necessarily distance us. If you're starving and you don't know if you're going to have a home in the next couple of weeks or years or whatever, of course you're going to have trouble concentrating on your spirituality, or it's going to be like really aggravated and you're not going to enjoy it. So in a way, this book's okay if you want to get it for reference, but I would not say get it and think you're going to base your spirituality or relationship with Inori on it. It wasn't meant for that. It was just meant to do field research. So even though they observed, and that can be useful if you can pick through and find what works for you, in a way can also be damaging too, because they downplay any actual spiritual meaning of any of this stuff. They'll just relate what they were told, but they're kind of ambivalent. They claim that the book was designed by Inari, which I have no idea what that means, but they also call Inari it, he or she, interchangeably. The vast majority of the time it's it, so I don't know if they mean Inari is a concept, Inari is the mountain, Inari is the rice field, or Inari is, I don't know. So it was kind of confusing too. It's a lot of academic stuff. It's a lot of, if you aren't really interested in learning the history of Japan or the temples or what happened when they lost all this history and all this other stuff, then, maybe, it won't be the best read for you. So it's not really light reading. It starts out really light, and then it gets, like, drugged down to academia, and then it gets really light for a portion, and then gets drugged down into academia. She was more angry that, and perhaps rightfully so, that men emphasize the male powers of Inori. But of course, if a man's very masculine, that's what he's going to emphasize. And she's obviously very feminine, so she was shouting right back that Inori has female aspects too, and like all this yonic imagery and all that. And I'm like, well, a lot of this sounds like speculations from outsiders. I don't know. So I leave it up to you to determine what the symbols in that means. I think we run into a lot of danger when we just go and we read something, or like, okay, that's what the book says, that's what I'm going to believe. So is it worth having? I guess so. I would not pay full price for it. I got it for 7 something. The tag on the back says it was $28.50 new. I would not pay $28.50 for this book. No way would I pay $28.50 for this book, and I've seen it go for a lot more. It's okay. Keep in mind, it's 20 years out of date. Nothing at all in this book may apply anymore in Japan. You may go to Japan waving this book around, and people will be like, what? We don't think that way about Nori. What are you talking about? Why are you so interested in Nori anyhow? So, it's okay, is what it is. It's okay. It's neither the greatest book ever written about Nori nor the worst. It's okay. But it's not meant, just so you know, going in, it's not meant to help your faith. It's not meant to condone a faith. It's just meant to do research. It has absolutely nothing to do with promoting Inori or, promoting Shinto or Buddhism or anything. They're respectful enough, but they don't believe any of this stuff, and they just see it as something to be researched and have more books written on it. They don't really care if you believe in Inori or not, or if the faith spreads or anything else happens. So, I figured I would share that with you guys. It's a field study. It's not, a spiritual book, just so you know the difference. There are spiritual elements, but they're only in there because they were picking at them for research, and they did take part, like I said, in spiritual experiences. But again, it was more just so they could do research. It wasn't from a standpoint of faith. I would really love to see a pagan author or, a Shinto Buddhist author write something. Even if it was like 20 pages, I'd rather read that than read a case study. But it's what we have. So if you guys like what you see, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.